I did not choose to stand in the grand hall of the Velharan Palace that evening. I was ordered there, as always. My name is Ethan Cole, and I was once a soldier in the last great war humanity ever fought against itself, before we learned to look outward instead of inward. That war ended a long time ago, but the armor I wore that night was born from it, and it had never once let me down. The hall was full of light and music, and tall alien nobles in shining suits that hummed with soft blue energy fields. I stood near the doorway, still and silent, wearing the same suit of armor I had worn for over 20 years. It was dark gray, scratched, dented in places, and patched more than once. It did not glow. It did not hum. It looked like a leftover from another age, because it was. Humanity had only recently joined the Great Galactic Council, and we were still the newest and smallest voice in the room. Most of the alien nations saw us as clever but primitive, useful allies with old weapons and older ideas. I had been sent as part of the small guard detachment assigned to protect the visiting delegates, including the princess of the Velharan people, a young woman named Silvira, who ruled with sharp words and sharper eyes. She noticed me almost as soon as the feast began. "What is that?" she asked, not quietly, gesturing toward me with a raised hand covered in thin silver rings. Her voice carried easily over the music, and the room quieted just enough for everyone to hear. One of her generals, a tall man named Threll, with pale green skin and a uniform lined with medals, smiled and answered for me. "That, Your Highness, is a human soldier, and that," he added, nodding toward my armor, "is apparently the best equipment their species has to offer." Laughter rippled through the hall. I did not move. I had heard worse before, in worse places, and none of it had ever stopped a blade or a blast from reaching me. The princess walked closer, studying my armor the way someone studies an old, broken machine in a museum. "It has no shield field," she said. "No energy core, no lights. Tell me, soldier, does it still work?" "It works," I said simply. She laughed, a light and careless sound. "It looks like something you would find buried in the dirt of your homeworld. I am surprised your people did not leave it there." I said nothing more. It was not my place to argue with a princess in front of her court, and there was no use explaining something she was not ready to understand. Some lessons are better learned than told. She turned to her generals. "Since the human seems so proud of his old medal, let him stand outside the hall tonight, at the lesser gate, with the lesser guards. His equipment suits the position perfectly." More laughter. I bowed my head slightly, the way I had been trained, and walked out through the tall doors without a word. Outside, the night air was cool and quiet, a sharp contrast to the noise and light behind me. Two other guards stood at the smaller entrance, wearing the same glowing armor as the nobles inside, though theirs was built for defense rather than show. "Rough crowd tonight," one of them said, glancing at my armor with something between pity and curiosity. "I've had rougher," I answered, and took my place beside them. "I want to explain something about that old armor of mine, because it matters to everything that happened next. It was built during a time when my people were still divided, still fighting each other across a broken and dangerous world. We did not have shield fields back then. We did not have the smooth energy technology that the Velharan and other advanced species used so easily. What we had was metal and design and the hard lessons of survival. During that war, one side of humanity built weapons that could reach through almost any kind of energy shield and shut it down in an instant, turning the finest protective technology into dead weight in seconds. So the other side, the side I had fought for, learned to build armor that did not depend on shields at all. We built armor from layered plates and internal systems that worked no matter what kind of energy was thrown at them. It was heavier, it was less elegant, but it could not be turned off from a distance, because it had nothing to turn off. I never expected that old lesson to matter again, not out here, among the stars, surrounded by nations far more advanced than mine. But the universe has a strange sense of timing. It happened almost exactly at midnight. I first noticed it as a strange silence, a moment where the hum of every energy field in the palace seemed to catch and stutter at once. Then, the lights inside the hall flickered, and a low pulse rolled through the air, one I felt more than heard, pressing gently against my skin like a wave passing through water. The two guards beside me staggered, their armor suddenly dark and lifeless, the soft blue glow gone in an instant. One of them dropped to one knee, confused, tapping frantically at controls that no longer responded. "What is happening?" he said, his voice tight with alarm. I did not answer right away. I was already moving toward the doors, because I understood exactly what had happened, even before I heard the first shout from inside the hall. Someone had used a pulse device, a weapon built to disable energy shields across a wide area all at once. It was a clever and dangerous piece of technology, clearly built by people who understood the advanced defenses of the Velharan and their allies extremely well. It was also, without anyone in that palace realizing it, completely useless against me. My armor had no shield field to disable. There was nothing in it for the pulse to reach. Inside the hall, chaos had already taken hold. The elegant lights along the walls flickered and died. Nobles who had been laughing and dancing only moments before were now stumbling in confusion, their fine armored escorts suddenly as vulnerable as anyone else in the room. Alarms rang out, but weakly, as if even the palace's own systems had been struck by the same silent wave. Through the dim light, I saw a group of figures moving through a side entrance, dressed in dark, featureless suits that carried no royal marks. They moved with clear purpose, heading directly toward the raised platform where Princess Silvera had been seated only minutes before. I did not wait for orders. There was no time. I crossed the hall quickly, my boots heavy and steady against the marble floor, weaving between panicked nobles who barely noticed me passing. General Threll was near the platform, trying uselessly to activate his own darkened armor, shouting commands that no one around him could carry out. He looked up as I approached, his earlier amusement replaced completely by confusion. "Your systems are down," I said quickly. "All of them. Get everyone away from the platform, now." He blinked at me, still trying to process what was happening, but something in my voice made him move. He began pulling nearby guests back, shouting for calm even as his own voice shook slightly. I reached the platform just as the first of the dark-suited intruders climbed onto it, moving toward the startled princess, who stood frozen, staring at the strange, silent scene around her, perhaps for the first time in her life facing a moment her wealth and title could not simply command away. I stepped between them. The intruder paused for only a heartbeat, clearly expecting no resistance in a room where every advanced defense had just been switched off. That heartbeat was more than enough. My training had never depended on flashing lights or humming energy, only on steady hands and years of hard practice. I moved forward, catching the intruder's arm, and turning the motion aside, using the same simple techniques my old instructors had drilled into me, long before any of us had ever heard of the Velharan, or their shining palaces. The intruder stumbled back, clearly unused to facing anyone who did not simply fall the moment their weapon or armor failed. A second attacker rushed from the side, and I turned to meet them as well, using the solid weight of my old armor, almost like a shield of its own, absorbing the impact of a blow that would have staggered an unprotected person. It was not an easy fight. There were several of them, and they were skilled, moving with the confidence of people who had planned this moment carefully, expecting no opposition once the pulse had done its work. But they had planned for shining, shielded soldiers, not for a design built decades earlier to survive exactly this kind of attack. I kept myself between them and the princess, holding my ground, deflecting and redirecting each attack as it came, never allowing them a clear path forward. My old armor groaned and scraped under the strain, but it held, plate after plate absorbing what should have overwhelmed it, exactly as it had been built to do so long ago on a very different battlefield. Somewhere behind me I heard General Threll finally rally the other guards, organizing them despite their darkened armor, using whatever weapons and tools still worked without power. Together, we slowly pushed the intruders back, cutting off their approach to the platform, and forcing them toward the same side entrance they had used to enter. Within a few tense minutes, it was over. The intruders, seeing their plan completely fail, retreated through the entrance and vanished into the night, chased by shouts and the sound of restored alarms as the palace's systems slowly came back online. The hall fell into an uneasy quiet, broken only by heavy breathing and the soft murmur of stunned nobles trying to understand what had just happened. I turned toward the platform and found Princess Silvera still standing exactly where she had been, though her earlier confidence had been replaced by something far more thoughtful. Her eyes moved slowly over my armor, taking in every scratch and dent she had mocked so easily only hours before. "Your armor," she said quietly. "It never stopped working." "No shield to disable," I said simply. "Nothing for their weapon to reach." General Threll walked over, still shaken, his own dark armor hanging uselessly around him. He looked at me with an expression far different from the amused smile he had worn earlier that night. "We build our defenses to be perfect," he said slowly, almost to himself. "So perfect that we never imagined preparing for the moment they might simply be turned off." "My people did," I said. "We learned that lesson the hard way, a long time ago. We stopped trying to build armor that looked impressive, and started building armor that would not fail us when everything else did." The princess studied me for a long moment, and I saw something shift behind her eyes, the careless amusement from earlier completely gone. "I mocked what I did not understand," she said finally. "That was foolish of me." "You are not the first to make that mistake," I said gently. "And you will not be the last. Advanced does not always mean stronger. Sometimes it only means untested." She nodded slowly, glancing once more at my scarred, heavy armor with new eyes. "Perhaps," she said, "your people's old lessons are worth learning, even for those of us who believed we had nothing left to learn." I said nothing more. There was no need. The lesson had already been taught, not through my words, but through the simple fact that I was still standing, steady and unharmed, in a hall full of soldiers, whose finest technology had failed them in the one moment it mattered most. As the palace slowly returned to order, and healers and engineers moved through the crowd checking on the shaken guests, General Threll approached me one final time. "Thank you," he said simply, extending a hand in the human gesture he must have learned somewhere along the way. "I judged your equipment too quickly." "I will not make that mistake again." I shook his hand firmly. "No hard feelings, General. Just remember, next time you see something that looks old and simple, take a closer look before you decide it is weak." He gave a small, tired laugh, the first real one I had heard from him all evening. "I will remember that." Later that night, as the palace guards resumed their normal posts, and the excitement slowly faded into quiet conversation, I found myself back at the lesser gate, standing once more beside the same two guards from earlier. Their armor had come back online, glowing softly once again, though both of them now glanced at my old, dark suit with clear respect rather than pity. "Guess the lesser gate got the important guard after all," one of them said with a small smile. I allowed myself the faintest smile in return. Old metal, but it gets the job done. Above us, the stars shone quietly over the Velharan Palace, distant and steady, much like the armor I wore, built not to impress anyone, but simply to make sure that whoever wore it walked away from whatever the universe decided to throw at them next. I had been ridiculed for that armor more times than I could count, by people from many different worlds who judged it only by its appearance. But that night, in a hall full of failed shields and shaken generals, it had proven once again exactly what it was built for, quietly and without complaint, just as it always had. Sometimes, I thought, the oldest lessons are the ones the universe insists on teaching again and again, whether the powerful are ready to learn them or not.